Marketing Cloud, account engagement, which is otherwise known as Pardot, and we're going to call it Pardot just because it's only 2 syllables. As you know, Salesforce acquires companies from time to time and then changes the name. So just a little quick game. Those are the legacy names, and then on the right-hand side, those are the current names. See if you know those. I'll give you just 10 seconds, and that is the answer. See if you were right. How many people were right?
Oh, at some point we were thinking they would just change every name to something engage. So we're just like waiting on engagement for that.
Yeah, and there's all these components, products, engagement history dashboard, sales engagement, marketing cloud engagement. And of course we want to thank our sponsors. We cannot be here without them. We would not be in this room. You would not be here, or the fee would be, $1,000 for this. So this keeps our prices low. Thank you so much. And so I'm Carol Springer, owner of and lead consultant at Gabriel Sales. We're a marketing agency, go-to-market, marketing automation expertise, Salesforce, mainly Sales Cloud. So anything to do with sales and marketing is our expertise, and we've been a partner since 2015.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, hi. I work at Agency 73. Got some representation here today as well. We're based in San Diego, Salesforce and marketing consulting. So we would love for you to connect with us and stay in touch, especially because we're going to rush through this, and we would love to just probably chat with each of you for multiple minutes, but we will not have time for that. So
yes.
Here's our agenda for today. Really big picture. We're talking about Pardot. Set it up, maintain it, view the data. So just big picture, here's what we want to be talking about. So yeah.
Okay, and so the setup, we're not going to go too deep in this. So a few things to know is, one, there's an option to have multiple business units. So we really shy away from that unless it's absolutely necessary, because it really complicates the management of the syncing. And there's one client I've been working with, we've been struggling with it for a while, just because we have to make decisions on what those roles should be. So avoid that unless absolutely necessary. Really, second is make the most of Salesforce campaigns. Salesforce campaigns are like kind of the glue that tie the marketing data and the Salesforce data together, and you can use the amazing Salesforce reports. So really utilize campaigns as much as possible, and then use the default B2B connector.
Mm-hmm. Second 3, we like the creating your own Salesforce created campaign. So Pardot and Salesforce require a connection point campaign. There's a couple of defaults it might try to throw in there, but make one specifically to recognize if somebody was created in Salesforce first. And I know we're jumping right into the weeds of things, but we just want to give as many tips as possible. So make a campaign for Salesforce created. There is a way you can manage users now in Salesforce. So as Salesforce over time just completely, takes over Pardot, you're going to be managing more of the settings on the Salesforce side. You used to manage them purely in Pardot, kind of just lean more into the Salesforce setup. It is a little complicated. There's 2 or 3 places, permission sets, that sort of thing, but lean into that side. And then as much as possible, try to sync with the CRM ID, because there is this new feature permanently enabled as soon as you install. People can have multiple email addresses, so that used to be our key identifier, and just if you have CRM IDs, lean into that. So, yep. Like we said, you might not spend a lot of time setting it up, but if you do set up Pardot, here's our quick tips. So next, maintain it. This will be where you spend most of your time.
Okay, and a couple of main points is, one, we want to make sure you're always talking, sales and marketing should be talking together when you're planning this. And so one thing, as you know, API names can be very sensitive. When you change a field name, a lot of times it warns you in Salesforce not to change the API name. Same here. So if you do change an API name in Salesforce, let your Pardot admin know this, or your Pardot person, because it could wreck the syncing, and then we're going to have sync errors. And the other main point is the pick list edits. And then we have show and tell slides after this. So pick list edits we're going to talk about, the email opt-out feature, and then
Sync errors can occur. That's going to be your main place you're checking if there's anything that has a discrepancy, especially if there are field restrictions. Salesforce does not prompt anything if you make something restricted that it's going to completely break Pardot, but it could. State fields are a little tricky because Pardot's gathering them in one way, and then as we all know, Salesforce state fields are just their own kind of thing. And then lead source is just a really important field. A lot of metrics are based on this, so defining that as a team and kind of setting up some different options there.
Cool. Okay, so the field sync behavior, we could probably talk for hours on this. So when you make a new field in Salesforce and the marketing team needs it either to run a dynamic list, so we want to see customer is active or customer product is A, B, or C, you'd have that field and you then need to make it in Pardot. Because remember, they are two separate databases, even though they're all under the same roof. So you need to create that field in Salesforce or in Pardot, map it to Salesforce here, right? You can choose it. And then you have to understand, well, should we keep this in sync? You typically want to do that. The only time you won't want to do this is if you really want Pardot to control that 100% for some reason. And then we have to make a decision every time you make a field, a custom field, and you can make custom fields in contacts or accounts or opportunities inside of Pardot. Custom objects is a little bit more confusing, so that most people don't have custom objects, but in the higher versions you can. And then you have to make a decision if there is a conflict in the field. Salesforce has one legacy field populated and a form comes in and someone overwrites the phone number. That's a really good, I mean, that's not a custom field, but that's a good example of like, should we have the form phone number overwrite or should we have like the Zoom info, data append in Salesforce overwrite? So you have to make a decision. And so you have to this is why it's so important to talk because there's not one right answer. But if, customer care is calling your customers, once a month and updating all their information, we'll definitely let Salesforce be the record, the master record. Okay, and then even when you tell Salesforce or Pardot to keep in line with the Salesforce records, the pick list, I would say this is like the number one thing to take away. If you have a custom field in Pardot that's a pick list, because Salesforce, this happens all the time. People are changing pick lists for lead source, that's a very common one, or marketing data. And if the pick list changes in Salesforce, it will come over to Pardot, but this box won't be checked necessarily. So the data comes over, but still Pardot can't read it. And so that's going to be a problem if you want to run a dynamic list. You're like, well, it's not giving me the option. And so again, sales and marketing should talk if there's a problem. It's just or admins, if you're changing pick list items, make sure it's somehow related to the marketing team, let them know. So then they can check that box. It's a really, really simple thing to do. And then opt out. So a lot of admins are not familiar with email marketing. So email mass marketing, there's rules, especially if you're in EMEA or APAC or Canada. You can't just email people. And there's the canned spam rules in the United States. And the main rule is if someone wants, you need to have an unsubscribe list. So you all, I'm sure, have unsubscribed from an email in the past. And so when you unsubscribe, you kind of expect that you will not get emails from that company anymore, right? So it's not magic how it works. Kind of magic in Pardot, you click the button and Pardot will never send that person an email again. However, it also checks a box inside of Pardot. And that checkbox, email opt-out, connects to Salesforce email opt-out. So then you have to decide in that sync error, should we let Pardot be the master record because Pardot's the one doing the email marketing, or should we let Salesforce? Well, again, there's not one right answer because if people are calling or sending emails to sales and they say, take me off your list, I might check that in Salesforce email opt-out. Or if I have SalesLoft or Outreach.io and the people unsubscribing from those platforms, well, then Salesforce should be the master record. So how do you know which one should be? So kind of depends. If you're not doing any other marketing within Salesforce and no customer care people are managing that, then let account engagement Pardot do that. Or a really great solution is to have it. So here's where the sync behavior is. Use the most recently updated field. So if it was updated in Salesforce or it's updated in Pardot, that's one that's going to overwrite it. And there's been like tons of announcements about this in the last 2 years. They're going to force you to do this, and I don't know if they even force you to do it anymore. But if you want to do that most recently updated, you have to put on field history tracking on that email opt-out field. And I'm sure it's all, probably based down because of compliance reasons, so you can track, did someone actually opt out and who changed that. So that's a really important one because it's keeping you compliant.
And then making fields required. So like we talked about, if a field requirement happens on the Salesforce side and Pardot doesn't know that, or you're getting data that's not in sync with what's happening in Salesforce, you will get sync errors, leads may not make it over. And like we're trying to reiterate this a lot, but marketing and sales need to really talk. So I know we're in the technical world, but what ends up happening is we spend a lot of time in people and processes, and essentially Pardot is this place where we need to force marketing and sales to work together if they're not already. So yeah, just thinking about any requirements, you could have a data discrepancy, being very careful about that and aware of, the real life implications, leads not making it through. And then lead source. So this seems like just one field. Really, like we said, there are several things we could probably talk hours about. I do want to give a caveat. I do love lead source. So at the end of the day, you can probably tell I'm a millennial too. I went with the less than 3 instead of the heart emoji. But at the end of the day, you're going to get a lot of questions around reporting on lead source values. Okay, out of the box, Pardot has this feature behind the scenes that attempts to populate a text-based lead source field based on the referring URL and the UTM parameters that may be coming in. It is automatically mapped to the drop-down list in Salesforce that sometimes is a restricted pick list. Right away, that's a little bit of a discrepancy. You see data coming in from Pardot, like Bing.com, that might not even be an option in your lead source dropdown. That's why I usually recommend either decoupling, making some different custom fields in there, thinking through some different ideas, but really just getting your lead source defined between your two teams. Does it mean your acquisition point? Does it mean your conversion point? Is it first touch? Is it last touch? Is it marketing lead source? Is it sales lead source? This could be a whole philosophical discussion. So really just working together on that. Like I said, do recommend maybe just having acquisition lead source, conversion lead source, latest lead source details, that sort of thing. I've seen orgs. We have an example, like we said, a lot of show and tell, but we have an example of here's an org with, 7 different lead source fields alone. That's not even the common 5 UTM parameters. Some orgs use 10 UTM parameters for first and last touch. So a lot of lead source possibilities in there. Just a really important field because there are a lot of ROI and, high-level KPIs based on lead source. Okay, up next. This is kind of our last big topic, but viewing the data. So you want to really make sure all of these are considered, right? Set it up, maintain it, but then give access to the data.
Okay, and so the few areas that we want to have the Pardot data show up are in the page layouts and the list views, and then, of course, your reports and dashboards. Mm-hmm. And this is what I think is the greatest thing about Salesforce acquiring Pardot. You can find the data in Pardot, but it doesn't do a great job at visualization and cumulative data. Mm-hmm. And so Salesforce reports and dashboards, which we'll cover in a little bit, mm-hmm. are really key to that. So a couple things that you want to put on the page layouts. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah.
You want to stop at that?
Yeah.
First,
so these are now the types of data that you can add. Those are the places, types, marketing specific fields. So a little section, bring in your Pardot fields, usually a new section or a tab. For sure, you're talking opt-in, opt-out, lead source, that sort of thing. There are engagement activity widgets. Those are read-only data coming in from Pardot into Salesforce. The data is not stored in Salesforce, but you're able to see it. Engagement history dashboards, the campaign related list, really important one. And then, like we said, reports and dashboards, those could be on page layouts as well.
Okay, and so here's an example. This is like one of my favorite list views, and I'm always shocked when clients they've been using Pardot for a while and then didn't have a list view like this. So if you're doing a lot of high volume sales, for example, and you have BDRs, having this in your leads where you have the account engagement last activity, the account engagement score. So every time someone goes to your web page, so Pardot tracks, they cookie the people and will track every web page visit. And certain web pages can have like 10 points or 20 points or 50 points. And so this account engagement score really helps us prioritize the leads. So if you come back from a trade show and there's 300 new leads in the system, send them an email, get them to click on a link and visit your web page, and then the salespeople know the people that are most engaged are who they should call. So that's really important. And then I also like, as a sales manager, I like to have last activity, and this last activity is the Salesforce last activity. Have these people with the high scores been touched? So that's really important. And then, of course, you can get this information on a dashboard for governance. And then within the actual contact or lead page layout, these are my 6 favorite here. Account engagement score, so we know how active they are, and their last activity. So a score of 110, but it's been over a year, not really that hot, but if it was yesterday, hot. How long ago was it dated? Okay, this comes from Developer Edition, so that's why the created date is after the last activity. And then I put the URL in there, and this is so as a salesperson, we can just click on the URL to see the full record in Pardot if we like. And now that Pardot is in account engagement inside of Salesforce, this link goes to the legacy pi.pardot, and there's a way to get that to go to the account engagement if you like. All right, and then the last thing is to get some the campaign data. So as I said before, like campaigns really kind of tie everything together, and it's nice to know as a salesperson which campaigns this person was involved with. Did they go to this year's Dreamforce, or did they go to the last 3 Dreamforces in a row? Did they go to our booth? Do they know us? So when I'm calling, I know if it's like an ice cold call or a warm call. And these kind of same concepts apply for customer service as well. Are our customers engaging with our content? And so this is helpful to know. Oh, yeah, and the last one is the engagement history. It's kind of tiny here, but this is what the widget that Ashley was talking about.
Little widget. This is read-only data coming in from Pardot. Really helpful to see those activities. You do have to be a user in Pardot to see this. Pardot doesn't care about user licenses, so that's not a big deal. And then the engagement history dashboard. So this is a visualization powered by CRM Analytics, B2BMA, Einstein Analytics, whatever the current name is, Analytics Studio. So this is powering data behind the scenes, giving you access. You can put this on campaign, account, lead, contact to get some great data there cumulatively from Pardot.
Give me like 3 minutes.
Okay, so we're talking about reporting now. We do want you to highly utilize campaigns. I know we've said that several times, but campaigns are your open-ended object, between the 2 systems. Use them. Keep your member statuses consistent. Campaign influence reporting is this great out-of-the-box ROI tool, especially if you have the top 3 editions of Pardot. You get additional campaign influence models. They're great. And then, custom report types. We really like those. Carol will show a few examples, and then just some good dashboards. So what we're trying to do is get the data from Pardot into Salesforce and report on it in that way. Just a quick visualization of how the data is connected. Not everything is stored in Salesforce. If there's nothing else to remember about this slide, just remember that not all in Salesforce. A lot of it is still stored in Pardot.
Okay, and this one here, there's in order to get these amazing Salesforce reports and dashboards, there's some custom report types you need to build. And so this is an example of one. It's campaigns tied to list emails. And there's another one called campaigns tied to campaign feed. And so then you can run reports of all the campaigns and how much Pardot activity is happening within those. And then it would feed you something like this. So you can see your marketing people are going to love this. Every time I first show a new client, they're like, what? This is amazing. So you can see by campaign, how many clicks, and then you can pull in the subject line. And so instead of like Pardot's very limited to see multiple emails next to each other. And so this makes it really easy. And then you can filter also. Let's only look at the ones that have more than 10 cents or seed lists, for example, aren't showing up. Okay, and then of course you can throw them on the beautiful dashboards. So our key takeaways.
Work with marketing, get sales and marketing to talk. Like we said, Pardot is a really great mass marketing tool. Salesforce does not claim to be a mass email tool because there is no built-in opt-in functionality. So Pardot is great for that, decent user interface, have those teams work together. You'll mostly be maintaining pick lists if you're an admin working in a Pardot org, and then give your team access to the Pardot data, let them see who has high lead scores, what's going on in the marketing side.
Yeah. And then understand the pick lists and utilize the dashboards. So that is it. And so we're open to questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, there are a lot of good resources out there to help learn and go through as you're building. I think of like the trip from Salesforce Admin or the spot from Sorcante. Do you have other resources you'd like to reference?
Those two are the top. Salesforce Admin. Love Lucy Mazelon for sure, and any article that she writes. Sorcante is great at powering a lot of these, trends and then being very aware of them. There is a Slack group called the Pardashians, so that one is great.
It's very elite.
Yeah, it's basically just hundreds, maybe now thousands of Pardot consultants helping each other out. Really great group. And then there's a couple of good, Ben Lamont does a good job, but there's a couple of good YouTube, like Pardot Admin training courses that are available as well. So I think those, a couple of outlier articles, maybe blogs, but yeah, you name the two, plus the Pardashians channel.
And I have a YouTube channel too, Gabriel Sales Tech. It's got like 20 videos on it, just like really quick tips for, especially when you're trying to train someone, like how to import a list, how to build this custom report type. I have 2 videos on that. So, but the Pardashians, like, people support each other so much, and you get answers so fast. So it's actually very cool. Anything else? How many people actually use Pardot today? Okay. All right. Almost. Okay. And then also, I think we're both we're open to reaching out on social. Open to a complimentary 1-hour session if anyone wants to just have a, shoot the breeze or ask some questions, things that you're stuck on, because sometimes it is hard to find your specific use case online. And Ash and I have both seen so many different use cases. So a lot of times there's not one right answer. So it's kind of like, well, do you guys care about first touch or last touch? Do you even do UTMs? And how should I do my syncing? Or we don't even have a sales team. So what do I do then? And so there's lots of options out there.
Well, thanks everyone.
Okay, thank you for stopping in. We'll hang out for a little bit if anyone wants to come up one-on-one. Thank you.